in this section we are going to talk about shapes. How to identify objects with simple shapes. It's really important that we understand the idea behind each shape. What kind of basic shapes build up with the shapes we see of the object. Regardless how complex of the object, we can break them down with really simple geometric shapes. Let's talk about what kind of shapes we are going to use for identifying the objects. The basic shapes are square, circle, triangle, and trapezoid. These are pretty simple. We can use all these four shapes to create whatever we going to see. The trapezoid actually is a combination with the triangle and the square. Usually these are the three that we use for identifying all the shapes. But just use the trapezoid to make it easier for us to see clearly, faster, instead of combining triangle to the square and more combinations. Now the triangle could be any kind of shapes of triangle. It could be right angle triangle. It could be any kind of a triangle. Okay, now for the square, now for the circle, you can use oval, any direction of oval as well. That is part of the family. Now for the square, we can actually use rectangle as well, and also including the rectangle and also diamond shape too. So these are the family. So let me draw a little bit darker for you to see. So these are the basic shapes we're going to use for this lecture, the first half of the lecture. This is pretty easy. Now for the trapezoid could be any direction. It could be upside down. As I said, the trapezoid actually is a combination with the triangle and the square, but just making things easier for us to see much quicker. So I added the fourth element onto the group for you to easier to see and understand what's going on with the objects. The first object we are going to use, which is a cup, as you can see on the screen. It's a really simple object. Now for this exercise, we are not aiming for the precise measurement of the object. The idea, which is to look for the shape. So keep that in mind. We are going to break down each shape on the object as simple as we can. We are going to use flat shapes instead of a three-dimensional object at this time. Exercise your eyes to see if you can identify all those shapes first, and then we're going to move forward to the next exercise. We are going to have few objects from simple shapes to more complex shapes for you to understand the idea how to break them down. Once you know the concept, everything will be much easier. Instead of copying what you see, by understanding what's the shapes behind of it, what's the concept behind of it, will make you a better artist and also much easier for you to know what you are dealing with. Instead of copying the idea, you know the object inside out. That's what I always say to my students. You have to know your subjects before you can create. You have to know your subjects before you can draw your objects from inside out. Now let's start with this cup. As you can see, the cup pretty simple actually. Now from the top to the bottom, what I'm looking at is the biggest shapes of the object, which is the body. What kind of shapes do we see on the body? It's a long rectangle, isn't it? As I said, this exercise is not going to aim for anything fancy, no details, but try to see if we can understand what we are looking at. Now the opening, we can see there's a trapezoid. We are looking at things really simple, isn't it? Instead of just draw from the top, okay, this is my cup right here, and this is how it look like. This is how it look like. This might somebody how to draw this without any idea what they looking at. They just look at our shape. But break it down by knowing what the combination of the objects, the simple objects, the shapes, how to combining with the simple shapes from this group. Right, so we use the rectangle and trapezoid, which is upside down trapezoid. And the next thing will be, look at the ear. The ear is kind of a curve, isn't it? But we're not going to look at the whole curve. Instead, I will look at the ear. There is a circle shape within. There's a circle. And then there's a triangle actually. So this is how the shape was combined. Of course, you don't see this line right here, but if you have to use any kind of shapes, if you have to cut the piece of paper, for instance, if you have to use these shapes with paper cutouts to create these shapes right here, this object right here, so this would be the combinations with all these shapes. So this would be the first object. We're not going to do any perspective on these objects, but just really simple. Really simple. The idea which is to know what we see. That's more important. Now the next shape we're going to look at is a vase. Now when we look at this vase, it has more curve than the cup that we just saw earlier. Now take a look at this vase. Take a moment. What kind of shapes you can see? Just use the example on the screen right now. Try to see if you can identify the shape of it. Take a moment. Okay, so let's break down the idea of this object. Let's see if it matches with what you come up with. From the top, we can see there is a trapezoid. Clearly, we can see there's a trapezoid. The next, what I can see, which is more like kind of a, you can say it's another trapezoid or a rectangle. There's a little bit change right there. It could be another trapezoid, but if you want to use a rectangle, that's fine too. Now for the lower area, that will be another trapezoid. That's why I would like to use the 4 shapes to come in instead of looking for more complex shapes. Trying to make things simple. Now, this object most likely is created by trapezoid. And on the body, which is, when you come to see, we're not going to see any curve. Try to see the object without curve as much as we can, as much as possible. So on the body, I can see another trapezoid. As I said, we are not looking for any precise measurement at this time. Just look for some shapes. Have fun with it. Now the body goes down. I see another trapezoid. Long indication of the trapezoid. And also underneath the body right here, there is a rectangle. There's a little space right here. That's a rectangle. And another trapezoid. Another trapezoid at the bottom. So this is how the shapes combine. And I will show you guys how this will affect your drawing if we're going to use curved line on top indicate later on. But right now, this is what we're looking for. Try to understand the shapes with just straight lines and also straight shapes as much as we can. This is the only curve that we use, otherwise it's all straight. Just like this exercise right here. This the only area that has curve on top of the object that I can allow myself to use a circle. Otherwise, everything else composed with straight line at the beginning. I hope you have found this idea when you look at the object. So let's go for another object. Now look at the next object to see if you can identify the shapes. Take a moment. Have fun with it. Let's see if you have discovered the shapes correctly. Now when we look at this object on the top, once again we have a trapezoid. It seems there's a lot of things with trapezoids, and this shapes comes in handy. Now the next shapes we are looking at the body, what do we see? It's a round shape, isn't it? Now this is a round shape. I have to use either a circle or an oval. It looks like an oval shape, isn't it? Because it's flattened, it's not fully round. Now when we draw, let's draw through the object. Alright? Let's draw through the object. We're not trying to make anything fancy, we just try to understand what we see from inside out. So that is the oval for the body. Now look at the legs. They're looking like just individual shapes, but actually it is not. If you carefully looking through these shapes, connecting what we call the invisible shapes. The invisible shapes, which is the leg come down this way, correct? And now another leg come down this way. So I can actually convert them into another trapezoid. Even though we don't see any line shapes come here, but from here to here is the same pattern of the object. So we combining the same pattern object, forming this trapezoid. For the ear, for the details, we're not going to go for it as much. But if you want to, like on the ear area here, just more like a triangle shape. Just like that. If you want to make it more identifying, even more precise, there will be a circle in here actually. And also for the ear hanging on the side, even though we don't see it, but the direction of it, we can tell that's also another triangle right here. Now looking at the other part of the object, what we see is a rectangle. For the biggest shapes, the next thing I see, which is two trapezoid. Now for the handle, it is a stick. It's a long round stick, but from this shape, we're not going to do any round shape of it. Okay, we are going to use a long rectangle instead. As I said, we're trying to make things flat. Let's clean up a little bit more. These are the basic shapes of the object. Simple, really simple. Actually, this part, get a little bit closer to the object. We're not looking for the precise proportion of it, so just have fun with it. Try to see if you can identify this shape. Later on we will make sure everything looks precise. Right now just have fun with it. I'm going to put the shapes right here again so we can use that as a guideline what we're going to do. Square, circle, triangle, and trapezoid. Really simple shapes. This indicating as diamond shapes or rectangle, any direction. This is the family group, and here, which is oval, any directions. And also any roundness too, could be this flat as well. Now the triangle could be straight edge, and also could be any direction. The trapezoid could be irregular balance too. Doesn't always have to be both sides is balanced. So these are the idea of the simple shapes, the family that we use. Okay, so let's get familiar with this. Simple, really simple shapes. I think everybody can see these shapes. By the end of this exercise, I bet everybody will start looking at objects differently. The next object is a lantern. The next object is a lantern. Look at this Chinese lantern. Look at this Chinese lantern and give yourself a little bit of time. Let's look at this Chinese lantern and try to identify. Let's look at this Chinese lantern. Let's look at this Chinese lantern to see if you can identify those shapes. Let's take a moment. Look at this. Let's take a moment and look at it. Okay, let's see if you have matched. Let's see. Okay, let's break down these shapes from top to bottom. At first, we start from the let's start from the body. What kind of shapes do we see from the body? It looks like more of a rectangle, isn't it? So let's make it flatten with a rectangle. The next thing, let's push it up. What do we have? That's right, a trapezoid. And let's move upward. What do we have? Another rectangle, isn't it? Great, you got it. See, there's nothing to it. And the next shape, what we see for those wires. For general shapes, for all the wire combined, just like the invisible shapes we saw earlier on the vase, on the legs. Now there is another rectangle, just like that. So on the top, the tip, what do we see? Easily, that's a triangle, isn't it? Let's forget about what's inside here. That's not important right now. We try to find out the contour shapes of it and use as simple as we can. Use the shapes as simple as we can. Alright, this triangle looks a little bit straighter, just like that. Now, move down. Even though we do not see too much at the bottom, but I can see a little bit space right here, and that's another trapezoid. And when we go down, another rectangle. And the base. In the base, I can use two shapes combined, but if you want to, you can use one shape, which is a oval shape, actually. This is how to combine. This is how to identify at the bottom. But if I want to make sure that my shapes correctly, I can actually use a rectangle at the bottom. If I don't want to use any curved shapes, all I have to do is just add the oval shapes onto it. That's what we have. So there's nothing to it, isn't it? Easy exercise and a simple way to see your object. No details. We are going to take one step at a time, no details. We will go into details when we talk about rendering with value and textures, etc. Now let's move to the next object. The next object we have here is a teapot. This is a kind of fancy looking teapot. Don't get distracted by the details. Just look at the shapes. Take a moment, look at the shapes. See if you can identify with those simple shapes. Take a moment. Okay, let's break down the object together. When we look at the object once again, let's start from the body, the biggest shape of the object. When we look at the body, instead of curve, I'm trying to use a trapezoid for the big body. The largest part of the shape. And go to top. What do we see? Another trapezoid, isn't it? This has been a really simple exercise. It is meant to show you how to see things. Now let's move up to the top. What do we see? Another trapezoid, isn't it? Easy enough. It's getting easier and easier for you to see the objects now, which is great. Let's go for the bottom. What do we see at the bottom? The bottom, we also have another trapezoid. Just like that. Let me clean up a little. What about on the spout area? The spout area, I'm going to use a triangle instead of complex shapes. I'm just going to use a triangle. That's it. As simple as that. Triangle. Now for the handle, what do we see on the handle? The handle actually is an oval shaped